The Ohio State Board of Education is sued for allegedly banning all criticism of the factually incorrect and politically tendentious 1619 curriculum. So no criticism allowed in America. Since 1619 is such a fixation for our lying social justice reformers, maybe we should go all the way back and have you recreate a few witch trials from 1619. Can't you hear Hillary cackling at the idea? The one witch who never used a broom a day in her life? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. In the words of Conway Twitty, hello, darling, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Alrighty then, every week we showcase just a few of the endless stories impacting kids in schools across the country, but we do more than just talk about the issues. FreedomProject Academy is now enrolling students for the fall. Our FPA provides a classical education built on Judeo-Christian values, for kids in kindergarten all the way through high school. We can educate your kid for one class here and there or the entire curriculum. We do all the grading, we do all the transcripts, we do all of the hard work to make sure your kids get a real education right in the comfort of your own home. They never have to leave your own front room. So go ahead and request, please, a free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com, and check out how we do education. Okay. Today we start in Ohio, the land of my boyth, where the state board is currently being sued for banning any criticism of the New York Times 1619 project, which, by all accounts, and by many, almost huge numbers of history professors, most of whom are not conservative, warning the American people that this is garbage history. Now, the Board of Education, the State Board of Education, the highest Board of Education in the state of Ohio, will not let you challenge or even argue the point. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, so when you say, one man can't make a difference, Daniel Reginald is going to disagree because he's trying to make a difference, and he is suing the State Board of Education, as you said, in Ohio, because the State Board banned citizens from even speaking during the public comment section time. This is a time where the public is allowed to make comments.
Yeah.
And
now,
it's only...
These are the questions they ignore anyway.
Oh, yes.
So, usually you will sit there and they're on their phones.
Oh, it's comment section time.
They're not even going to let you say it out.
At this point, they're like, their feelings are going to be too hurt if you would go and stand in front of a mic and say, I disagree. And it's specifically, it's not they're banning public comments altogether. It's if you disagree with critical race theory. And they're admitting it.
Yep.
They're actually admitting it. The board president acknowledged creating and enforcing such a policy where they do not allow for the public comments to happen. And they never put it to a vote. Like, it was just like, I'm going to do this because I know it'll help the rest of my fellow board members to not feel so, hurt or offended.
Well, Father Daniel Reginald correctly is suing on the basis of his First and his 14th Amendment rights. The board president has acknowledged, as you said, Katie, critics have been, quote, barred from having access to the public forum created for public comments or testimony based solely upon their anticipated statements and testimony, the lawsuit said. Just because they were, the school board was worried they might criticize the 1619 curriculum.
And the off-limit subjects, of course, are about 1619. You can't criticize the promoting of the 1619 because that's what they want to do is promote it, or any lesson plans that are being based on that bogus hoax of a curriculum that's created by the New York Times. And obviously that all includes, critical race theory and all of that. As you said, even if we think you're going to maybe talk anywhere in the vicinity of the topic, no.
That these school boards are designed to be the liaison with the moms and dads who are the stakeholders and the payers for, the ones who pay for all of this schooling. I love the way the complaint from Mr. Reginald reads. It says, quote, on July 14th, 2020, the Ohio State Board of Education embraced and adopted policies advancing Marxist ideology of critical race theory and the false proposition of systemic racism, in further support of advancing the Marxist ideological critical race theory and the false proposition of the systematic racism criticism, the Ohio Department of Education has posted on its website support for the 1619 Project, a Marxist-inspired effort at revisionist history that falsely seeks to redefine and vilify the United States and its founding principles. And this, at the Ohio State Board of Education, you are not allowed to talk about.
And in this lawsuit, they name the board members, and especially they name Laura Kohler is the president, and she's the one who decided unilaterally to say, oh, we're not going to allow them to critique it. So usually you would set aside, public comments. It's when people can come up. But she said after the November 10th, 2020 time frame, Kohler made an unofficial policy that, quote, would preclude any member of the general public from making comments or providing testimony during the public participation portion of meetings. And we're talking about any racial topics. And it's because then on April 14th, so just a couple weeks ago, not too long ago here, Kohler made further statement that she had a couple of speakers who wanted to address the board on critical race theory, but she would not let them, citing the policy we have been using for the past 6 months. So not only did they implement this, they've been using it, and she's then defending and saying, well, hey, this is the way it's been.
She made up a policy on her own without any vote, and then whenever anybody wants to challenge the policy, she says, we can't because the policy won't let you. Pretty much.
Yeah. And
now, again, this is Mom and Dad. I urge you to go back and look at yesterday's show, please. It was all about how Joe Biden's plans for public schools will eliminate mother and father as we know it, will remove the role of parenting from mother and father almost beyond recognition. So it's another example of what happens under radical leftist control of education. It doesn't matter how angry you are. It doesn't matter how many things are wrong. You can't even speak your objections now because these educrats, and look, it doesn't take a high IQ to be a board member. In fact, they prefer mediocrities at board members, because when you put mediocrities on school boards, they're likely just to shut up and do whatever the superintendent say, and that's what you got going on here.
You set me up for this one because we have Merlin Johnson, who was elected to this board to represent the Cleveland area. You know anything about the Cleveland area? In the Cleveland area, basically praised Kohler for not allowing this, saying, I was really glad when Kohler said we weren't going to have those speeches anymore, and I would just prefer that we not have a conversation about critical race theory or 1619. I don't want to sit here again and listen to 2 months of people. They have their opinions. This is not what I'm here for.
In fact,
this is not what I'm here for.
In fact, she goes on to say, right, that if we allow moms and dads to speak, this will not any longer be a safe space for me. So the school board is a safe space where she doesn't have to listen to anybody's position but her own. This is why, by the way, the Lake Erie, the Cuyahoga River burnt in Cleveland. This is why you had Mayor Dennis Kucinich. This is why you had Cleveland become the first major city to default. This is why you have the entity known as the Cleveland Browns and the Cleveland no longer Indians. Cleveland, I'm so glad I'm away from you. I haven't been back to you in 25 years. I will never set foot in your bounds again. You can rot like that stupid river you set on fire.
Dr. Duke is going to take a moment while he, I guess, comes back from the regulating
my chakras. My chakras are now out of
past. Anywho, we're going to move on here.
Cleveland.
Dr. Duke just gave a confession to the audience. We have Zoom confessions happening with our teachers, as we always do here at the Dr. Duke Show. We have more Zoom confessions. I feel like it could be its own segment. Zoom. Two professors from Roosevelt University in Illinois, where it's suburbs. There's a couple different campuses, Roosevelt University, of the Chicago area. So they were on a Zoom call, and they basically were bragging to one another about how great it is to teach social justice. It's like a dream come true.
Well, apparently there was an audience, a big audience of people.
Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Don't forget that aspect of it. Yes, please. Go ahead.
You're giving them dessert before dinner. Stop. Now we have Gina Harris. Here are our two contestants. Gina Harris, an adjunct secondary education professor who teaches middle school theory. So teaching the future teachers on how to teach middle school theory, anyway, in practice, and serves as a liaison officer for the National Education Association, so NEA, and the Illinois Education Association. That's contestant number 1. Contestant number 2 is Ralph Martyr, a professor who teaches public policy and public administration, who also serves on the school board of Oak Park and River Forest High School. And let's just take a little listen.
So as a professor, I'd like to say, this is what happens every day. These are education professors. These guys have nothing to do with radical leftism or politics, their jobs. And listen to them bragging about how they and all of their colleagues have completely co-opted American colleges.
I love the university. I just do.
I have to say, I do too.
Yeah, it's a great place. I'm so glad you're there too. You fit in so well with their, the university's philosophy and mission, right?
I mean, it's all social justice all day, every day. I get to talk about all the things I love all the time.
All day, every day.
All day in the day gig, all night at my night classes, when I'm here. Really, I'm living the life over here.
All day, every day. That's what they get to do all day, every day. Did that not sound like the beginning of an awkward first date? Like, hi.
Oh, maybe they met
here.
on. There's a new, Mom and Dad, there's a new site out there. It's called
Zoom.
Screw Your Middle Schooler Now. And that's a dating site for college professors who want to screw over your middle schoolers. These two clearly met on that dating site.
There you go.
They don't realize that there's an auditorium full of people who are overhearing what they're saying.
Again, dessert before dinner.
All
Haven't gotten that yet.
they needed is unspicy Northern Italian food at a restaurant they could be eating.
There you go.
And they would be sitting together over this new dating site. Screw over your middle schooler.com.
It does make sense to me why I can see how Gina would teach those who are supposed to teach middle schoolers, because she's just like, this is like I'm living the best life over here, and that's what middle schoolers are. Now, there's more to this lovely little story of our Zoom. Well, let's just listen to what they say.
Yeah, I always flip out the kids that take my master's class on fiscal policy and public budgets when the first 3 or 4 classes are devoted to philosophy of social justice and how you organize society. We don't talk about one, budgetary item. They're like, oh man, Professor Martiri, this is a really weird way to teach a budget.
Just so you guys know, you're on the mic in the auditorium.
Okay.
We're cool with that.
We cool with that.
Be cool with that. This is the cavalier way a country dies. This is how a republic dies, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't die in bloodshed. It doesn't die in battlefield combat. It dies with cackling morons, right? You sign up for a budgetary class in business with me at the master degree level. You're going for I assume, a MBA or something like that, and you sign up for a master's class about budgeting and the process of doing budgets. And I spend the first 4 or 5 classes,
three or four
classes talking about social justice, so much so that my graduate students say, this is a weird way, sir, to approach budgets.
All right, and let's talk about budgets or money, at least fiscal responsibility here. 3 or 4 classes, not 3 or 4 minutes. So 3 or 4 classes at a master's level course, which master's level courses tend to be once a week.
Yep, 3 hours.
So 3 hours, 3 or 4 times.
12.
That's 9 or 12 hours out of the total time period that you're in that class, which is maybe 15 weeks. So maybe
you're talking like
a
third of the class,
if not more,
dedicated to
social justice.
How do you really think once those 3 he's going to spend 3 and 4 weeks setting up his left-wing social justice? Do you really think he's not going to mention it again?
Oh no, absolutely
No.
not. And the thing is, if it's a master's level course, they have to take it. Like, let's be. I mean,
it's right.
It's not like a gen ed
if
where
you
I can
wanna
drop
teach-
it and take something else.
And
Like,
if you want to
take
teach middle
that.
school anything, you've got to take her course.
Her course, but
Yep.
his course is
It's for graduate students.
You're-
At every
oh.
level, they have you coming and going, and I love that the bravado when somebody chimes in and says, "Hey, we
just
can
so
hear
you know,
you."
Like an unknown speaker comes in,
We're
like
cool
from
with
a,
it.
we're-
Yeah, why
we
wouldn't you
cool?
be cool with it? Because
Again, middle schooler.
there's nothing that can be done about this. No one's willing to do anything about this. They've transformed your education. They're laughing in your faces, Mom. They're looking you in the eye, America, and they're laughing at you as they steal your country from you. And we spend more money, and you send more of your kids to college every year. Congratulations.
And while we're talking about how basically all these teachers, administrators, unions, all of them are laughing at you, mom and dad, for sending your kids to these schools, they're laughing behind your back, and then they're still going to do whatever they want anyway. And it's, proof is in the pudding here, where we basically have a school district in Missouri telling that we have the literacy teacher telling the teachers, hey, send out one lesson so mom and dad think you're teaching this, but here's really what we're going to send, and we'll talk about it. And so it's happening Rockwood School District in Missouri, and parents had complained actually about basically the indoctrination that was happening. So it's Natalie Fallert, who's the 612 literacy speech coordinator. She decided to respond. And what did she say? She wrote to all the middle and high school principals that had parents, had repeatedly complained to them. And, basically some of these complaints included that they were pushing an agenda. Fact check true, I'm sure. We're pushing critical race theory. And she says, I had to look this one up. No, fact check true. You're probably doing that as well. We're making white kids feel bad about their privilege. Mom and dad, do you see all the things that we talk about here on the Dr. Duke Show? And this is what parents are complaining about.
Literally, an educator saying, our job is to make your kid feel bad about who he is. Okay?
Yes. The parents also complained that the teachers were teaching kids to be social activists, that they were stereotyping, that we're teaching kids to be democratic thinkers and activists. Right. Okay, so... And parents were able to see basically this in real time because it's online, and they use something called Canvas, which at Freedom Project we use Canvas as well. It's just one tool to be able to post grades, post homework, do all of that. But the parents were able to see what's happening. So here's the solution to all of this. And you respond, chime in when you'd like to, Dr. Duke. I know you will. Natalie Fallert writes in a memo to the principals. This doesn't mean throw out the lesson and find a new one. Just pull the resource off Canvas so parents cannot see it. Keep teaching. Just don't make everything visible on Canvas. This is not being deceitful.
Okay, chiming away. This is the thing you should be very, very concerned of. They don't see being deceitful. They don't see lying to you as a problem. You complain about what they're doing. They hide what they're doing and keep doing it. And her response is, this is not being deceitful. This is just doing what you have done for years. Prior to the pandemic, you didn't send everything home. You did not let teachers know what you were doing. You taught it in your classroom, and things were peachy keen. We are going old school. We're going back before COVID, and we're going to lie to your face and tell you everything is peachy keen.
Okay. The only thing I give her credit for on this is using peachy keen, because that's
peachy
a term
keen.
I would use. It's peachy keen.
It's like putting...
Is that a Midwestern thing?
It's like
is that a Midwestern thing?
It's like putting the dumbest person you know
yeah.
as the dictator of the country.
But I repeat myself. What are you saying?
The supervillains in this country, the ones who are systematically undermining every freedom we have, are idiots.
Yeah, but we're allowing them to do it. That's the problem.
Literally, Mom and Dad, I'm using that word correctly.
Literally.
A confederacy of dunces, if we go back to Jonathan Swift's favorite statement. This is a confederacy of dunces who are successfully railroading this country into intellectual, moral, and fiscal bankruptcy.
Fact check true. She also then goes on to say that, how you're going to do this, administrators or principals, you could duplicate an entry lesson into Canvas, so making 2 copies. Again, they're dumb. When you say duplicate, you should know that's making a copy. But anyway, making 2 copies. You publish one for the whole class that's a lean version of the lesson, and the original that has all the stuff in it can be published and only assigned to specific students if needed. Or you could specifically email those students a copy of what they need. So the simple fact that they are advising for these principals, then the teachers, to personally email secret things to your kids, if that doesn't set off alarms, we're doomed. We are doomed.
And at the very end, she says, I hate that we are even having this conversation. I hate that we even have to have a conversation about deceiving your parents, that we actually have to plan to do what we are going to do anyway, to exert our will on your kids, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And the cherry on the top is 29 days and counting, and you know that means it's 29 days till we're done with these sick kids. Get them out of my face. I don't want to deal with them ever again, and I want a new crop of them to indoctrinate next year.
Okay, we retreat from the day's bad news. Seems to be bad news all the time with American public education. And again, Mom and Dad, I just am going to introduce Instant Classic by reminding you of the show today and how they're laughing in your face. They're now saying that our job is to lie to you if you find out what we're doing in the classroom. So that if you think you know what you're doing, lie, cheat, only send home certain things. We do Instant Classic as a way to try to remind you what education used to be like when the purpose of teaching was educating kids in basic literacy. It wasn't about left-wing theory. It wasn't about indoctrinating children. One of the great writers of Western culture, probably one that you have not read and don't know much about, is Nikolai Gogol, the great mid-19th century Russian novelist whose work was so pivotal, even though you might not have heard of it, it gave rise to the great Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky himself looked back at Gogol and realized how much this writer, obscure to the American audience, how much he transformed the writing of Russia. And so in this particular quote from Nikolai Gogol, who was kind of a writer of fantasy literature in many respects. He wrote very bizarre stories. He wrote a story called The Dream of a Crazy Man, basically is the Russian a diary of a madman's diary, which shows you over the course of a year's worth of entries how the mind begins to slip. I mentioned yesterday, Gogol has a story about a nose, N-O-S-E, that jumps off somebody's face and starts living the high life all around Petersburg. Very fun and fantastical are the premises, but the morals to the story are shocking and very, very well taken. Take this quote from Nikolai Gogol. "But nothing is lasting in this world. Even joy begins to fade after only a minute. 2 minutes later, and it is weaker still, until finally it is swallowed up in our everyday prosaic state of mind, just as a ripple made by a pebble gradually merges with the smooth surface of the water." That's a beautiful observation, and then he makes it in the context of a bigger point. That there is nothing in this world, not even human joy, that makes us happy forever or for very long. We are the only animals, quote unquote, who ever lived that are not satisfied simply being animals. God made us so that there's nothing in this world that can ever make us truly happy. There's always going to be that hole. Even joy is not enough. It doesn't last long enough. The only reason God made us that way is if God made us to be completely happy here, we would never turn to Him about the next world. And so, by definition, this world wasn't our home. It was never meant to be our home. And people who live as if this were all things, like modern progressives and socialists do, they have nothing. They can imagine nothing better than this ship of fools we call reality.
All right, those are the stories for the day. If you have a question for us, feel free to drop it in the mailbag by emailing askduke@fpeusa.org. That's duke@fpeusa.org. And if you enjoy our content, please support our show and join the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to get signed up now. And as a special thank you, we will ship you a signature tumbler. It's so nice.
That's a wrap. This has been the Dr. Duke Show for Freedom Project. I am Dr. Duke. She's Katie. And until next time, stay educated, my friends.